Welcome to episode 116 of Trek Live. In this week's episode, we're going to be tackling a new kind of style of talking about or generating a topic.
Yeah,
First of all, how you doing this morning, Bill?
doing well, doing well. Looking forward to this. This is a new thing for us. It could be really fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it could be literally anything. So I'm looking forward to it. I don't know what else to say
yeah.
other than I'm waiting with bated breath to find out what we're talking about.
That's the beauty of this kind of topic is that it could literally go any direction, and we don't
Yeah,
know. So it should be a fun uh, hour.
it should.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
Yep. How is your rewatch going?
it is on standby still.
Okay.
Shamefully, I haven't had a whole lot of opportunities to dive back in. I'm still stuck right around the middle of season 3 at the Defector,
Gotcha.
between Picard and the last 2 Saturdays. I've been at Best Picture showcase movie marathons, sitting in a movie theater all day. So my usual Star Trek rewatch time has been otherwise taken over by other events. But luckily, after today, my weekends are pretty free, with the exception of some stuff with this,
Yeah.
with course heading and Trek Live.
Yep.
So I'm hoping in the next couple of days into next weekend, I kick it back off with The Hunted, and then onward into the meat of season 3, which is
Okay.
some of my favorite stuff in all Star Trek. Really, that middle section of the 3rd season.
Yeah.
It's like one hit after another. But what about you? How are you doing?
I am doing pretty well. I have watched 3 episodes this week. Starting with Obsession, moving on to Wolf in the Fold, and then The Trouble with Tribbles. So,
Trouble with Tribbles. Nice.
in my opinion, it's a pretty solid bunch.
Mhm.
Obsession is kind of a Captain Ahab story. We kind of get some
Yeah.
of Kirk backstory there. That's
Yep.
cool. Wolf in the Fold is kind of a whodunit type of thing.
Yep.
That was fun. And then The Trouble with Tribbles is kind of just an all-around classic episode that it's one of
Sure
those
is.
episodes that it's no matter how many times I've seen it, I could have seen it yesterday, I still would want to watch it. I think it just does everything. It's
It
great.
does.
Yeah. It's got some
Yeah, the
humor.
writing
It's
is
got some, yeah, it's got
yeah.
everything.
The writing's really good. The humor is really well pitched.
Yeah.
I love the way it uses the whole cast, which
Mhm.
TOS does not always do.
No.
Characters like Uhura and Chekhov have some fun scenes.
Yeah.
Scotty's got some fun stuff. So definitely a really strong episode, and I think Shatner's at his best in that. I think his humor in that episode is like perfect. I think Shatner's like overall kind of tongue in cheek, self aware sense of humor fits really well into that episode
Yeah.
in his performance as Kirk. I think it feels right at home,
Mm-hmm.
which sometimes it doesn't, especially later on. Sometimes
Yeah.
when Shatner is a little bit more on the self aware side, it can take you out a little bit in a few cases here and there. But Trouble with Tribbles is really perfectly
Yeah.
modulated Star Trek humor, I think. So
Yeah.
glad you like it.
Yes.
I'm glad it landed as well as it did again, like that the rewatch.
Yeah.
Like it's always good to hear like the classic episodes that have that reputation. When you get to them and you watch them again with fresh eyes, it holds up.
Yeah.
Like the reputation precedes itself.
Yep.
Good to hear.
Yes. I guess we could just jump into the topic at hand.
Yeah. So what we're basically doing, we're calling it no prep, right?
Yes.
And we're going to use the Memory Alpha random article generator, which we do as a little side plug when we do Trek After Dark
Yes.
Discord hangouts with people in our community, just kind of hanging out watching Star Trek at night. We will use that as the sort of, very often we'll use that as sort of our guide for what to watch. If we're doing like group watches of episodes, we'll use the random episode generator to lead us to pick something if we don't have a strong inclination to go to something specific.
Mm-hmm.
So we've used this before in other avenues. Thad, I think, is the one who kind of introduced us to it in those settings to kind of give him some credit when we were struggling to pick an episode. I think he suggested, I think it was him, let's just go to the Memory Alpha random article generator and go with whatever it says. So we're kind of taking that concept and forcing ourselves to go into an episode like this of Trek Live with no prep, no lead time, no choosing a topic ahead of time.
Yeah.
And seeing where it takes us. It could be like...
I'm a little bit nervous, to be honest.
I am too.
Because I usually, when we have episodes or topics, I can kind of... And I don't really... I write a few things down maybe for the kind of the bigger topics, but the normal topics I usually kind of think about what I want to talk about and cover. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and with this, you never know. I mean, it could be something very specific. It could be an episode. It could be a character, a movie, a series. It could be something really, clearly this is what we're talking about. Or it could be something really vague. I mean, it could be a guest star that appeared in one little tiny part in an episode someplace that we'll have to figure out. How are we gonna do it? So it should be fun. It could be a phaser or a prop or a set or a ship. Truly anything. So how do we want to do this? Do you just want to...
Either you and I can open up a new tab and just do a share screen, and then we just do the random...
Let's do it.
Okay.
Whatever is easy for you, since you're the producer. So.
It's whatever. It's easy. It's either of us can do it. Let me see if I can... Okay.
I am definitely nervous though. Like I don't usually get nervous about doing these.
Yeah.
But the blindness of what could this be definitely has me anxious and eager to find out which direction we're gonna go in.
Yeah. Whoop.
Ian says the trouble with Tribbles is only beaten by trials and tribulations. That I might agree with that. For trials and tribulations by a hair. That's a tough call. But they are great to watch back to back for sure. I think watching them together sells the genius of trials and tribulations. If you watch it with the context of Trouble with Tribbles fresh in your mind.
Okay, so I brought up Memory Alpha. I don't know, Bill, can you see that all right?
I can.
Okay,
cool.
I
see it.
Yep. So if anyone wants to do this in the future or after this show, just go to Memory Alpha, obviously, and then I think it's under Explore, and it's random page. So that's it's pretty easy. It's a pretty fun little feature that Memory Alpha has that we, again, like Bill said, we've used in the past. So without further ado, I will count down and pick a random page, and it will be determining our topic for the episode. In 3, 2, 1. Okay.
Judith Reeves Stevens. Okay.
So
she is a novelist.
Yes.
It's difficult for me to talk about her novels because I can't claim to have read them. Some people in the chat may have, depending on who's here. But if you scroll a little further down, there is she was a staff writer on Enterprise in the 4th season. So she and her husband are a writing team. If you scroll further down, there should be, I would think, under her credits, back up, right next to where it says Enterprise. If you click that, number 5, I think it says 5 or 6, or 5.
Oh,
so we have some
pretty
episodes
heavy hitters, though.
Some pretty heavy hitters.
Yes.
She is, and there's a broader discussion to be had here, I think, with what she brought to Enterprise. I mean, this is going to be 2 weeks in a row of, I think, unavoidably an Enterprise kind of show. So clearly there are 5 episodes to talk about there that are parts of bigger stories, most of them.
Yes.
Because of the structure of season 4. There's one standalone in there. But I think one of the things that is kind of unavoidable when you talk about her and her husband arriving on Enterprise in season 4 is they sort of represent the shift that the 4th season of Enterprise, along with Manny Kodo, they sort of brought to the show, which was this much more self-consciously building on continuity, tying into the original series approach that the 4th season of Enterprise took, as opposed to, and I think even last week we talked about, or did we talk about it on Course Heading? I don't know. Now that we have 2 shows, it's hard for me to keep straight.
They just blend together,
right? We talked about the way that Enterprise in the early years was sort of much more hesitant to play with taking the continuity like head on and putting shoulder into really expanding on the prequel idea, like and tying into the continuity that we know about. So this is definitely their arrival, along with Manny Kodo becoming the showrunner, is the point where that changes in my mind, at least.
Mm-hmm.
So her 5 episodes, along with her husband, being the Forge, which is the first episode of the trilogy of the Vulcan trilogy, the Vulcan Reformation. Yep. Observer Effect is a standalone episode featuring the Organians from Errand of Mercy, experimenting on who are observing different species react to a viral outbreak, and learning about species through how they react to those, the fallout of that virus, impacting the population. United is the middle part of the Vulcan Andorian Tellarite alliance needing to happen to combat the Romulan subterfuge stuff. A lot of Jeffrey Combs stuff there, a lot of Shran.
Yes.
Divergence is the second part of the Vulcan Ridge storyline, revealing why Klingons look different in TOS. And Terra Prime is sort of by all intents and purposes, the finale. It's the 2-parter with John Frederick Paxton and his xenophobic get the aliens out of Earth little storyline. So there are some storylines. There are some episodes there. We could talk specifically about those episodes. We could talk about season 4 of Enterprise more broadly, and how the show changed over that time. And yeah, I think that's what we're equipped to talk about. Those two kind of.
Yeah, I think so. But also it's this kind of list of episodes just kind of shows her kind of wide range of ability to write. I think that there's a lot of different episodes there, so I think that also kind of shows her abilities. But yeah, let's do some season 4 of Enterprise.
Sure. Is since you've we may have talked about this sort of a while ago, like under a different context, I guess we could say.
Yeah.
But when you did your season, your Enterprise rewatch, like, I guess it was probably about a year ago now, did you find that the show took like a notable step forward in season 4? Like, did you feel that when you were watching it again?
I think so. I think it was definitely, you could definitely see that there was a shift. Whether it was, the set, the sets really look good in season 4. So it looks like a different show, but it also feels like a different show, with the direction that they go with, just episodes, and like you said, it tying to the original series, but also trying to do some new stuff as well. I think I don't know.
The other thing that really sets that season apart, like you said, the way the sets are shot, particularly the bridge, they give it a new paint job. Yeah. The graphic displays on the monitors are a little bit more lively, a little bit more colorful, much more going for like the TOS motif of I think it's yellow, green, and red, I want to say, or the color of the buttons.
Yeah.
Definitely some echoes of what we're going to get in TOS in the design of the readouts on the consoles and such. The more colorful bridge, definitely. But so there's that aesthetic stuff. It was shot on digital. It was shot on HD digital cameras instead of on film, which was a change for Star Trek at the time. And it also is this unique format that they decided to take with the trilogies, like the little 3-episode pods,
which they dabbled in season 3, right?
A little bit. Season 3 was, I think, a little bit more of a. They would have little stretches that were pretty connected, but the arc of the season was more like a seasonal story. Like at the time, everybody compared it. It was like 24 style. It was a single sort of thread that was pulling through the season, like one urgent mission that is the thing that's pulling through the whole thing. Where in season 4, at the time they were dubbed as like mini arcs. They were these little 3-episode or 2-parters. Very very often they would avoid. There are only a small handful, like you count them on one hand, I think, of single episodes that aren't part of a 2 or a 3-part story. And I think 2 reasons for that, from what I've understood in reading about the show, is they wanted to tell bigger stories. They wanted to do, to sort of find the middle ground, I think, between what season 3 did and still giving them the flexibility to not be tied completely into one thing like they were with the Xindi arc in 3rd season, and it allowed them to amortize their spending. So when they would build a set, they weren't building it for 1 episode; they were building it for 3. Like when they would do the Brent Spiner 3 episodes, they could build that Klingon bird of prey that the augments are on and use it for 3 episodes, and instead of having to rebuild every time. So it was a cost saving measure as well. And in the 3 Vulcan episodes, all those Vulcan sets, the planet stuff, the Vulcan High Council stuff, Vulcan High Command stuff was able to be used for more than 1 episode. So there's an economic, budgetary reason for taking that approach, as well as it gave them the ability to take these bigger storylines and really flesh them out and go bigger. So it was mutually beneficial, I think, for all sides. I think it gave us as the audience some bigger things to chew on, and almost like little mini movies. Those 3-parters for sure. But it allowed them to do bigger things budgetarily, I guess. So they're probably the biggest, like, on the surface changes that season 4 made. At least on first glance, along with the obvious embracing of Star Trek continuity. How do you feel about that sort of the 3-part episode, like the little mini pods, as opposed to like the overarching long season?
Cost saving strategy aside, I think it's a kind of I don't know. I want to say it's kind of where it's getting into the territory of like discovery kind of era, kind of style of storytelling. So this is, I know that they kind of dabbled with it in season 3, with this long, overarching story that's through the whole season, not just episode by episode. But this was kind of best of both worlds a little bit, in that they were able to tell stories. Kind of one-off stories, but longer duration than just kind of say one episode. So it was definitely a polarizing thing for what we've seen in Enterprise and in Star Trek in general. So
it was at the time. I think there was some skepticism at the time that I remember at least, with the different approach. The season 3 of Enterprise was met with I think mostly fairly positive. A lot of the people, at least in the circles that I hung out in on the internet, found it to be a step forward for the show, better than first and second season Enterprise, but not universally so. Some people prefer, still to this day, the more episodic approach. They want one-off stories. So this is a step closer to that, while still, featuring bigger, longer running stories. So like you said, it was sort of the best of both worlds kind of attempt of an approach. But I also, it's not they take that approach. They do the little mini arcs. But in addition to that, there is this overall theme of, slow walking toward this idea of the Federation. The thawing out of the human Vulcan relationship is very present in the fourth season.
Yeah.
Through the Vulcan arc, the three-parter that is her first.
Yeah.
Since we picked Judith Reeves Stevens, or Memory Alpha picked her for us.
Yeah.
Her first episode was The Forge, which is the Kickstarter for the thawing out of that relationship. But beyond that, there's a lot of talk of the way that relationship is moving forward and what it's going to do. And as an audience, we know, because we know the rest of Star Trek, that this is leading us toward the Federation. Mm-hmm. So there is that stuff still there, like kind of overlaying these little mini arcs.
Yeah.
So I think the genius of the season, they found ways to use the time they had. They kind of knew going in this was probably their last season as at least this era of Star Trek, if not forever. To kind of go out swinging for the fences with stories that tie into Star Trek continuity and do big things that fans would hopefully really respond to. Kind of go in the direction that the fans had kind of been clamoring Enterprise to do for the previous 3 years, while not tying themselves to one thing the way the season did. They didn't completely commit to, for 22 episodes we're going to do this exact sort of arc. They had the ability to do the Brent Spiner, Khan augments genetically enhanced humans over here, and then they could do this big story about the Vulcans, and they could do the thing with the Tellarites and the Andorians and the Romulans, and the slow walk toward the Romulan War is happening over here. We get to explain the Klingons. We get to do some mirror universe stuff.
Yeah.
All that flexibility and all those different avenues got explored. So, yeah.
Okay. This might be crazy, but let's say, let's play writer and producer for a little bit. Let's say Judith Reeves Stevens comes and asks you to join the writing staff for the season 5. Enterprise doesn't get canceled. What things from season 4 would you want to take into season 5 and build on?
It's a good question. I
think it would be it's kind of a fun kind of topic, and I'm trying to involve Judith Reeves Stevens. So,
well, a lot of the stuff that she and her husband and the rest of the writing staff really brought to the table in season 4. I love the way they use Shran in the 4th season. His sort of growing respect for Archer, and I definitely want to see more of that, more of his character, because we get so much of him in the 4th season.
Yeah.
The last episode of the Vulcan trilogy, and then he's in very heavily the one of the episodes she wrote was United. That's the middle part of that trilogy. Babel 1, United, and the Enar. Lots of Jeffrey Combs stuff, lots of Shran character development. He's kind of not in good standing with the Andorians anymore by the end of that last trilogy. He lost his ship. That wasn't going to be looked fondly on by the Andorians, so he's kind of maybe in no man's land with the Andorian Imperial Guard. Would have liked to see where that story would go. There were rumblings that if they were going to have a 5th season, they were going to put him on the bridge. They were going to bring him on as a series regular, and he was going to be sort of the Worf 7 of 9 injection into the Enterprise crew, which would have been cool to see. Definitely would have brought a new element to the day-to-day of that show.
Yeah.
And I would have wanted to see more fallout from the change in the Vulcans, for sure. I think there's a really cool line that I love in United, actually. I'm pretty sure it was United, which is one of the episodes she's credited with.
Yeah.
Judith Reeves Stevens, where they need to build this armada to detect. If memory serves, they were looking to crack the code of the Romulan drone ship, basically, that's going around and attacking and causing all this subterfuge and heartache with the different Alpha Quadrant species. And Archer's frustrated because T'Pau, who's now the head of the Vulcan High Command, or not the High Command anymore, it's transitioned to the Vulcan
High Council? Or no,
High Council, the Council. Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
whatever.
the head of the Vulcan government.
Yeah,
She's kind of dissolved their fleet and
that's
is kind of
plenty.
cleaning
Yeah,
house
yeah, yeah.
with all the high ranking officials that were there before when the Vulcans were more adversarial and
Hmm.
a little more shady.
Yeah.
So the she's clearly shaking things up and there's got to be a fallout to that that I would like to have seen um, played out more. And I think that's the kind of road that they were heading toward to really play into these interspecies relationships. Um, and then obviously, I think um, some of the character stuff I love. We get it a lot in Divergence, another episode that she wrote. Um, this character of Captain Hernandez, who's the captain of the Columbia in XO2.
Yeah, yeah.
Her relationship with Archer, which is established in Home early in season 4, and then
Hmm.
she's in the two-parter with the Klingons, Affliction and Divergence. Her and Archer have sort of a past and a history, and maybe sort of a present, kind of.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen those two ships, have to do things together and have those two captains have an ongoing dynamic to deal with.
Yeah.
That and the trip to Paul, of course. I think that
Yeah. Build
story
off
at
what
the end of
happened in Terra Prime.
yes,
That's
the
what I
ending of
was
that
gonna say.
episode.
Yeah.
That's the starting point, I think, for a big shift in their relationship, which we didn't get. In fact, we got the opposite with These Are the Voyages. We talked about that last week with Trip when we did our Trip showcase.
Yeah.
They kind of undermined a lot of where they were setting up to go with jump forward 10 years with These Are the Voyages. I would have loved to have seen more natural development for that relationship with that as the starting point at the end of Terra Prime, which is in line with our Judith Reeve Stevens because she was a co-writer on Terra Prime.
Yeah.
What about you? Are there things from the fourth season that really?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna talk about how Terra Prime. I want to build off Terra Prime. I think since we're in this kind of alternate universe where we can play producer and writer, that These Are the Voyages actually didn't come to fruition. It's actually got canned before it made it to screen, so that didn't happen. So then I want to see some trip to Paul action, just building off Terra Prime and then the kind of emotional baggage that comes with what happened in that episode, obviously.
Definitely.
But I would love to see, and a lot of people have talked about this before, but I would love to see the, and maybe Bill, you talked about it too, but just the start of the Federation. I'd love to see,
Sure.
to mention a a book to kind of tie to our topic at hand. I haven't read it, but I've heard great things. But Articles of the Federation, I just would love to see kind of how it's created and all the members and all the drama and stuff that would ensue with that. But yeah, I would love to see the start of the Federation in season 5, and then also the refit because we had teasers of it. I am
the Annex refit.
Yeah, I am a fan of the Annex refit, so I think it would be cool to see something like that. But yeah,
it would have.
Yep.
Definitely would have. As for the building of the Federation, I think there's no doubt that kept going on the same path that season 4 sort of laid out. That would have been a major a pull toward the end of the show. The Terra Prime also ends like the two sort of parallel big stories in those two episodes are the trip to Paul with the baby, and then this coalition of planets, which is sort of the forefather of the very beginnings of the building of the Federation, is on its way to happening, and Archer gets to make this big speech calling on the species to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was thinking that when I was saying it. I said it a couple times. I was like, "Am I saying this right? Was I just prescribed this for?"
Yeah.
No, but
Adam says fast enough. Trip to Paul sounds like almost like the name of a drug.
Yeah.
Kind of does. Yeah. But I think the building blocks of the Federation was clearly being laid out through the end of Terra Prime, with Archer getting to make that speech to pull the Andorians, the Tellarites, the Vulcans all sort of together and to start the process of having a coalition that actually works with these species. And that idea was going to grow into, the Federation, United Federation of Planets. That would have been it's certainly the thing that people wanted very eagerly to have. And the other big thing that people wanted, of course, was the Romulan War, which
Yeah.
was a known thing that through Balance of Terror and some other dialogue and into TNG even,
Yeah.
that around this time of Enterprise and in the lead up to the Federation being built, there was a war with the Romulans, and again, the building blocks were being put down in that 3-part story with Shran and Romulans using a drone ship to
Yeah.
drive a wedge between these species, hoping to not let them come together.
Yeah.
That's sort of the beginnings of that conflict. So that would have been another big thing that I think at the time the producers Rick Berman, Brian Braga, in the early days of Enterprise were hesitant to go that way because DS9 was still fresh at that point. DS9 just did a big war storyline with the Dominion. I think there was an understandable hesitation to tread on that territory again, just a few short years after DS9 had ended. But there was always a big hunger among the fan base to get that. There was a lot of potential in that, and how it would tie toward the founding of the Federation, how those two things, kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
The need for these species to pull together to go toe to toe with the Romulans would sort of lay the to creating a more formal, long-standing alliance and federation.
Yeah, so that's the way I see it. I see that there's a time jump a little bit into the 5th season. Their 5-year mission is over. Time for a refit, and now your duties are to help establish this coalition of planets, but then also in war. Which is a lot going on, but we got a lot to cover in the next
for sure
2 seasons, so 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the with Judith Reeves-Stevens and her husband Garfield Reeves-Stevens, their arrival on Enterprise, the shift in quality, I think, the shift into more consistently excellent quality, it makes for one of the biggest tragedies in Star Trek, is the quick end to Enterprise and having the plug pulled just as the show is really finding its legs. I mean, it never fails when I'm watching Enterprise to be bittersweet. That for the entire 4th season, as much as I love it, has this bittersweet sadness kind of coated on it because it's ending, and there's so much potential for. They're doing such a good job of wrapping up the show. To some extent, there are some things that are designed to sort of put a bow on characters and relationships and such, but that are weaved into the season. But it's really laying groundwork for other stuff to come. So it's really kind of painful to watch these things that are never going to be capitalized on and developed.
What could have been?
What could have been is really, that's a unique thing to Enterprise that show carries with it. Like that has baggage that the other shows really don't have with the what could have been element. The other shows ended on a more natural,
for better or for worse.
For better or worse, you can debate the success of the other 3 shows that had the full 7-year runs endings, but they had more defined beginning, middle, and end.
Yes,
they had a more natural course of life than Enterprise got to have. So, it's kind of impossible to separate that from me in my Enterprise experience.
Yeah.
One episode that Adam mentioned in the chat is Observer. Gives him the creeps when he watched it. Gave him the creeps when he watched it when it aired. He was 9. Gave me the creeps when I watched it, and I was 18. So we're both in that boat. So it's it's one of my favorite Enterprise. I don't know how well you might not remember it, Dan, because it was a while ago. It's like I mentioned. It's the Organians testing the humans through how they respond to this virus that's affecting Trip and Hoshi. The Organians can
Archer has to give this very grandiose speech
in sickbay, basically.
I remember it.
Empathy, and it's a great Kirk-esque, Picard-esque speech, defending humanity for what it is, better or worse, and kind of tearing apart the Organians' approach to to studying other species and talk to us instead of putting us in this bind and just watching it happen. You can learn more from talking to us. I love that. I love that taste of old school Star Trek in Enterprise. There's a lot of really cool character development for Hoshi. You find out that she was actually kicked from Starfleet for she was running a poker game against regulations and broke an instructor's arm when the instructor found them playing, tried to break up the game. Was dishonorably discharged, and Archer kind of pulled her back in for this mission because of her talents and Archer's pull. I love that. I love getting new and interesting backstory so late in the game for especially those characters in Enterprise who are kind of background that don't get a whole lot. Huge fan of that. There's some really cool, tugging at heartstrings, Archer Trip, romancy stuff in that with Trip dying.
Yeah.
This time saved at the end, but the disease does take him out at one point in this episode. I love that. So yeah, Observer Effect is always, and because it's a unique anime where it is a standalone episode, I always kind of go to it because if I want a taste of that, like fourth season, I as I've said many times, I'm not one to typically like pick a random episode and just throw it on, but on rare occasions when I do, if I want to watch Enterprise and I want to watch the best of Enterprise, that's sort of the one that I tend to go to because it's a 1 hour example of the best of Enterprise from the late part of the run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think the Observer Effect is the best episode out of her run of episodes?
I think The Forge is probably the best thing she wrote.
Yeah.
Observer Effect is unique. This is kind of like we were talking about Picard. Yeah.
It's hard to rank. Yeah.
The difficult nature of taking these parts of a 3-episode run and stack them. Where Observer Effect's more traditional, but the Forge, the way it sets up that story, with Admiral Forrest being assassinated. I love that scene with Archer in the room of caskets when Saval comes in and tells him there's funny business going on. That's a huge moment for me because Saval's been so adversarial for so long, and getting to hear Saval talk about the respect he had for Forrest and the sort of he's had it up here with the Vulcan way of doing things at this point. There's some really big swings in that episode that really kind of set up the rest of the fourth season. A lot of continuity stuff with the stuff on Vulcan and on the Forge with T'Pol and Archer. There's some great dialogue with the guy who's got Sorax Katra, like using dialogue from like Star Trek 4 when Spock's taking the test at the beginning of the movie, like old Vulcan, mythology stuff. I love the writing of that episode. And Judith Reeve Stevens, who is a novelist who wrote TOS novels going back into the 80s, like clearly somebody with a ton of knowledge and a ton of love for the lore of Star Trek. I think The Forge is the best example of her dumping all her love of Trek along with her husband's into an hour of televised Star Trek. And no surprise, it's the first episode that she wrote.
Yeah, she wrote books with Shatner as well.
Yes, they were Shatner's co-writer. When Shatner was in his stretch of wanting to be a Star Trek novelist, there was that Shatner's name on them that the Reeve Stevens, for all intents and purposes, wrote, having hatched story ideas with William Shatner. So that's another clear.
Oh man, there's a few. Captain's Glory.
Yeah. If Rob was here, I would be surprised if he said he hadn't read some of their books. This is in his wheelhouse, I think, as the founder of the Trek Book Club.
Yes.
There's a lot of Reeve Stevens goodness that is unfortunately outside my area of expertise, but The Stress-Free K says Empress Hoshi had a lot of potential from the In the Mirror Darkly Mirror Universe. We've done that in recent, but I am a fan of the In the Mirror Darkly two-parter as well, which is also season 4. The Reeve Stevens didn't touch that one. They weren't credited at least, but that is another thing that I'm sure we would have seen more of into the future of Enterprise had we gotten a 5th, 6th, 7th season. I think we would have found out what happened to Empress Hoshi in the Mirror Universe. Yeah.
A lot of potential stuff that could have transpired in season 5 for sure. Yeah.
The Reeve Stevens are somebody that I would love. This is on my in my perfect world of Star Trek, everything lines up. They're the kind of people see on one of these new shows. I think they would do really well on something like Discovery or Picard, because of their deep ingrained love of the lore of Trek and the TOS stuff and the TNG stuff. I think they could bring a lot to the table for those shows. With all you have to do is look at what she did and her husband did with these episodes in the 4th season of Enterprise, how easily she kind of weaved in the lore and the continuity without just being fan servicey. There's fan service in there that's undeniable, and it's stuff that gives me the warm tingles that I'm looking for in this kind of Trek. But it's not just for the purpose of let's be cute and do Star Trek stuff here. She's really good at that, and her husband's really good at that. So in a perfect world, I would love to see them invited onto a show like maybe Pike. If they did the Pike show, I think they would be great additions to that writing staff, because they would find ways to build on the continuity and the lore without overcooking those elements.
Yeah, I agree. I think they would fit right in, because I think Discovery and now Picard, I think is doing a pretty good job of doing what you said, weaving in the lore and the culture, but without feeling too fan servicey. I mean, there is definitely always going to be fan service stuff, but I think they do a good job of, in just my opinion, really balancing that out, which I think the Reeve Stevens did really well. Duo did really well. Yeah,
agreed, for sure. Yeah, they would be good additions to a writing staff that's trying to do those kinds of things.
Yeah.
If that's your game, if that's the kind of arena you want to play in, they would be solid additions, for sure. I don't know how they are or what they're doing and how active they are these days. That was quite a while ago now. And they've been around doing the Star Trek thing for decades now, so that could be wishful thinking on my part. Mm-hmm. But in a perfect world, I would be excited to see that kind of addition.
Yeah. Any Star Trek content that you'd like to mention?
That's a good question.
At that 50 mark.
Yeah, I haven't watched last week I kind of put the spotlight on the Ready Room, which is the not the podcast, the CBS All Access produced after show for Picard. I haven't watched the new one. Have you? The one for the last.
I have not. No, I've caught up to 2. I've watched 1 and 2, but not the 3rd one.
Yeah, I find that to be essential viewing. I've been busy the last couple of days, so I haven't done the new one. But I love Will Wheaton on that. I think he brings just the right amount of affection and the clear excitement. He's clearly a fan of the show and loves it. But he also he's a good interviewer. I think he does a good job talking to whoever the guest is that week, and getting the most out of those interviews. And he gets to his knowledge of the show, and having been somebody who's been on a Star Trek set before, he has a perspective that he can bring to an interview to get the goods out of whoever he's talking to. So I think that show is as good as it's been. There've been, like we talked about last week, a couple different iterations at this point of the Star Trek After show, After Trek, I think it's been called in the past. With mixed results, it hasn't been all bad, but I think this is clearly the biggest winner of the different iterations they've tried, and I hope it sticks. As far as podcasts go, when I've listened to Star Trek podcasts over the last couple of weeks, I've admittedly been gravitating toward people responding to Picard, the kind of typical episode recap kind of stuff, hearing different takes. So I can't point to anything beyond that yet. At least the last couple of weeks. What about you? Do you have
Yeah.
any spotlight?
I don't really have anything that I'd like to mention, but I will kind of build off of, I guess, just real quick before we move on to wrapping up the show.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any Star Trek content. Definitely need to get back into it. But stress free K makes a good point. Just about season 4 stuff. She really likes, or I really like seeing what life is like on Earth and Utopia Planitia. Yeah, definitely. I think with Star Trek, it's always about outward. It's kind of nice to see some inward stuff.
Yeah, in season 4, they definitely kind of take an approach to bring it closer to home. The Enterprise is sort of hanging around Earth and Vulcan, like the more local stuff, a little bit more. And you get episodes for a bit. The Terra Prime. Obviously, you're getting a sense of like what's humanity doing? Like what are the people on Earth thinking about what's going on?
Which we don't get a lot,
way,
right? We're always out on the final frontier.
Definitely, and one of the debates that's been kind of ongoing about Picard is the way they sort of are portraying characters like Rafi. I don't want to get into the whole Picard thing. There's another show for that for us. But there's a lot of debate about things like characters smoking tobacco, whether it's a cigar or a vape kind of a thing in this Picard show. And my answer to that has kind of been in Star Trek for the large part of it. We don't see a lot of like civilian life, people who aren't in a uniform on a ship in a quote unquote, I mean, this is controversial to say, some people don't see it this way, but in a military sort of setting, a service setting, Picard, and even in season 4 of Enterprise, a little bit here and there, we get little looks into what life is like on Earth when you're not serving on a ship, which is different, inherently different.
Yeah, Adam, totally right. He's on fire this morning.
Adam.
You just show about Starfleet desk jockeys.
I'm down. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Or currency wealth. Yeah, like clearly there's a lot of gray in the way Star Trek sort of portrays where exactly humanity is. Different shows take different approaches. In TNG, they really drive home humanity has arrived to perfection. Everything's great. Deep Space Nine leans a little differently into not quite yet. There's characters exchanging money for things on the station and have credits. So there's inconsistency all through.
Yeah, in TOS,
the way these things are presented.
I think Picard has said, you've earned your week's pay. Like they pay.
In Trouble with Tribbles, he says. Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of gray area. It sort of depends, I think, depending on what your Star Trek is, like what you grew up watching, what you kind of think of when you think Star Trek. Whatever show that is might be the driving, like what you tend to go with as far as like how those sorts of things are portrayed. I'm guessing. I don't know. That's just me talking out my what. But
topic for another show, right?
Probably for another show. There's a whole conversation.
Yeah.
Different shows portray where humanity is, and Enterprise season 4, like you were saying, does give us a little window into what life is sort of like on Earth, and that not everybody is in favor. Not everybody likes the fact that we're out in space. I think one of the characters says, telling everybody where Earth is and identifying us and saying, this is where you can find us, and this is, we're sticking our nose in different species business that might not want us involved, and things like the Xindi attack might happen as a result of that. I love that the 4th season of Enterprise plays with those kinds of ideas. And it makes that season really kind of stand apart from the rest of it. Enterprise and the rest of Star Trek, really.
All right, we're almost to that hour mark. So you guys know the drill. The discussion does not have to stop here. Again, Twitter and probably the Discord server are the best ways to keep the discussion ongoing. But we do have Facebook and all that if that's your bag. We will be back next week. Next week's going to be a busy week for both Bill and I, as far as podcasting goes. So I'll do the rundown real quick, but also have Bill shoot out a little graphic as well. Wednesday night, Thad and I are staying up late, to watch the premiere of the 4th episode of Star Trek Picard. That'll be a course-heading episode with Thad. Should be really fun, really tiring, but I think it's something. Should be interesting. Saturday, another course-heading. We'll be bringing in a new guest host to join me, I believe, or Bill and I. We'll figure it out. But
we'll figure it out. That's to be decided.
To talk about the 4th season, to do kind of a full overview of talking about the episode. The Thad episode will be just kind of like a live commentary, just talking through as we're kind of watching the episode. Sunday will be another Trek Live episode, just like today. So, a week packed full of Trek should be fun. Should be having some good conversations for everyone to kind of join in. So, that's my whole spiel. This has been episode 116 of Trek Live. We'll see you guys next week.
See you, everybody. Thanks for watching.